Dallas got curb stomped. They got thumped by Green Bay. And, Jerry Jones, I don't think was thinking at all that result was possible, and thus he would have an answer about Mike McCarthy's future. But what about a day later, do you think, about that situation, Albert?
Yeah, I think just having talked to some people there this morning and into this afternoon, Rich, I think like the feeling is Jerry's going to take a few days and assess all of this and let the coaches go through the normal stuff at the end of the season, exit interviews with players and those sorts of things. I heard consistently, and this is, going back 6-7 weeks, like the Cowboys really have to win a playoff game for people there to be safe. And I think it was with the assumption that they were good enough where that was probably going to happen. And so for this to go so far in the other direction, I don't know if it even affects just Mike, there was a feeling that part of this was because, Stephen Jones liked Dan Quinn so much that they may elevate him just in an effort to not lose him to Seattle or the Chargers. After an afternoon like that, do you look at it and say, no, we're going to look everywhere now, and maybe we do take a big swing on a Bill Belichick or a Jim Harbaugh or a Mike Vrabel. I think all things are on the table now. And look, I think both these things can be true, right? Like that on one hand, Mike McCarthy on balance doesn't deserve to be fired. He's won 12 games 3 years in a row. They've been third, first in scoring in those 3 years. But on the other hand, Jerry Jones is 82. That roster has got some older pieces like Tyron Smith and Zach Martin and Marcus Lawrence. And you wouldn't be able to blame a guy of his age with that roster for acting with some urgency, which I think could be the conclusion of all of this after, again, a little bit of a cooling off period here for everybody.
Well, you got to wonder, again, Parcells gets hired in 2003. Yep. And that comes off of 3 years of Campo, 2 of Gailey. And so you cannot compare the success that Mike McCarthy has had in terms of regular season wins. He did win a playoff game last year, ended Tom Brady's professional playing career, as we wound up finding out later on. You can't compare these last 3 years in terms of the success, including McCarthy's play calling this year. Smashing success regular season to the 5 years of Campo/Gailey. But I'm just wondering, is there what would the appetite be for Jerry to take that big swing on another Bill with the same resume, a similar resume here?
Albert. Well, I think you have to, if you want to go back and look at the Parcells thing, right? Because that could be instructive, and I'm glad you brought that up. There are 2 reasons why Jerry did that in 2003. Number one, he was embarrassed with what his team had become and going 5-11 3 years in a row under Dave Campo. So that was number one. And then, number two, he needed to regain credibility because he was looking to build a stadium. So are those conditions in place now where he's embarrassed by the loss and he needs to regain credibility? I don't know that it's like it was then, but then you add his age into it and maybe that, amps things up a little. And, I think the availability of Belichick is really fascinating. I had somebody yesterday who would know tell me that Bill has built a really strong relationship with the Joneses over the last few years, and that this has happened through football business, through league meetings, and that Stephen and Jerry really have a good rapport with Bill now. And, the interesting thing about their setup is a lot of people would say, well, Bill would never go there because the owner interferes and, this and that. Is that really true, though? Everybody complains about Jerry, the GM. Do they not have one of the most talented rosters in the league year in and year out? And I look at the coaches, and the coaches have been empowered there too. Now, I'm not saying they're what Bill was in New England, but Jason Garrett had a lot of say in the way those teams were put together when he was there. And I would say Mike McCarthy has too, in filling out his staff and being able to spend on certain things and being able to bring in veteran players. And so I don't know, man. I look at what Bill said. You can go back to October and look at the press conference when the Patriots played the Cowboys, but out of nowhere, Bill all of a sudden started saying all this really flowery, nice stuff about Jerry and Stephen Jones. And I just think there's enough there for us all to keep our eye on it. And God, as far as being good for business, Rich.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill Belichick and the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Back in the NFC East, taking on the Giants twice and the Eagles twice, and the new Washington Commanders situation twice. And then obviously, though, would it make a fit where he doesn't want to go to a spot where he's got to break in a new quarterback, right? Or he's got to go to a spot where he can't completely, have to remake a roster, right? Usually that's what happens when you're firing a coach, is things just are totally, completely flat. I'm just seeing if there's any there from Bill's
I would say, Rich, I think for the same reasons, the Chargers would make sense for Jim Harbaugh because they're so ready to win right now. I think the Cowboys would make sense for Bill. And, as far as just augmenting your roster, I mean, I can remember my old buddy Calvin Watkins, who I covered the Cowboys with a million years ago. I asked a player once, it was a guy from another team. We had him on a conference call, all of us who were on the beat at the time. And I asked him, would you ever want to play for the Cowboys? And Calvin stopped me after the conference call was over, looked me in the eyes and said, Albert, don't ever ask that question again. Everyone wants to play for the Cowboys. So to just have that ability to draw people in too, as far as building with urgency, and when it's just a 3 or 4 year thing, Bill would certainly have that there too. Now, I think Atlanta is going to be in the mix for Bill as well. It's been well documented over the last couple of weeks, and Atlanta has a lot of things to like too. But I do think the Dallas job opening, if it does in the next few days, changes the dynamic for a number of different guys. And, I certainly think Bill Belichick's on that list. I'd throw Mike Vrabel on that list as well.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.